So I said, well, we buy houses cash, and honestly, the more worn out, the better, typically. And I said, do you guys have any houses right now that are worn out? Because we'd buy them. And he's like, yeah, I have a house right now, and it's a lady who she doesn't want to deal with fixing it. She just wants to sell it and move on. And I said, sounds great.
Welcome to the Real Estate Investing School podcast. I'm your host, Joe Jensen. Today is a special day. We don't have one guest. We don't have two guests, but we have three guests. They are known as the Wild West Boys. We got Chris, Derek, and Jeff. They're known as the Wild West Boys. They're from Nashville, Tennessee. They flip houses and they also wholesale. Two of them are veterans, and one was a firefighter and a paramedic. They are, fairly new to the real estate game, but have been doing some really cool stuff with the time that they have. And I'm excited to dig into their story. Anyway, welcome to the show, you guys. How you doing?
Thanks, man. We're really excited to be here. And the name Wild West Boys. We're in Nashville now, but we're from Oregon originally, so we had to bring a little bit of the West Coast over here with us.
There we go. That's what's up.
Yeah.
Hey, at one point, Nashville was the Wild West, right? As they were making their way west. I don't know.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. We talk to people all the time, and they're like, Wild West, real original down in the South. And we're like, okay, you got to know our story first.
We're not from. So all three of you are from Oregon?
Mm-hmm.
And then all three of you ended up in Nashville. How does that happen?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we started the company in Oregon.
Oh, cool.
Derek and I were in the Army, and we were just kind of like talking, because me and him growing up have done pretty much everything together when it comes to jobs or anything like that. So, we started talking about what we want to do when we get out, and real estate was just kind of that thing. And we knew Chris was a contractor in Oregon, and we met him. We met him through an organization called Young Life. I don't know. It's a Christian organization where Chris was kind of like our mentor when we were in high school.
Oh, cool.
So that's how we met. That's a really long story short. Actually, Chris, you should dive into that a little bit more and kind of highlight how you met us, because it's a cool story.
Yeah, it's not too many people, have a story where they were, say, mentoring and then became like equals later.
Mm-hmm.
Very doable, but it's also interesting. Like for me, I was 26, 27 years old, and then Jeff and Derek, you guys were 16?
16, yeah.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah. So they're barely. I don't know. You guys were barely driving. I got a phone call from one of the organizers of Young Life. They said, hey. We have a bunch of guys going to this camp every summer. They don't have enough male leaders. So they asked me if I wanted to, basically jump in and just go and do this mentorship thing. And I said, yeah, let's go. So I met those two, like Derek and Jeff, doing that. We spent a couple years, I stuck with it. So I was, their mentor for the next 2 years, to graduate high school, kept in touch. And it was, a couple more years after that is when Derek and Jeff then transitioned into the military.
Nice.
Yeah,
what
so
branch of the military do you guys serve in?
We were both Army.
Both Army? Awesome.
Yep.
Yeah, so that brings us to, me and Derek both get out, and we're like, okay, we want to do real estate. We want to flip houses, but we're like, I have no idea what that even means or what that looks like. I've seen some dudes do it on HGTV a couple times. Like, we were following guys like Brian Pineda and Chris Crone at the time, watching them do their thing.
Uh-huh.
But not studying it really hard. So we were kind of just looking at it as for face value. But we knew there was construction involved. So we knew we had to do that. So we're like, okay, we know Chris. He's a contractor. We're just going to pick his brain on how to flip houses. So we meet with him. Derek meets with him and starts talking about maybe I should shadow you or do this. And Chris then comes up, hey, I've got this flip that I'm actually going to work on, that he was just going to work on himself. So Derek then starts working on it with him. And then Derek, I think you should take over, because it's kind of funny, because it really quickly went from, hey, maybe I should just learn something from Chris, to, hey, Chris is going to join this whole operation.
Yeah, absolutely. So we were I mean, Chris and I were doing all the work ourselves. We just thought the typical, like what every new investor thinks, maybe not investor, but flipper thinks is, hey, if I do the work ourselves, we'll save money.
Right.
So that's what, yeah. So that was our mindset. And that was our first 3 houses actually. But with that first house, we were just working away and we're like, Jeff and I were talking, we're like, we should probably ask Chris if he wants to partner up because he's a GC, he's licensed and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember just like walking up to him and he's maybe putting like baseboard down or something. And I was like, hey, do you want to partner up? And he was like, sure, sounds good. And then
All right,
I was like, oh, that's pretty easy.
Derek and I were like stressing about it. We're like, oh, we should talk about it. We're like, oh, I don't know if to do it. Like, we're moving to Nashville because we already knew we wanted to go to the South, but we're like, that's a big commitment for just bringing
Well, I didn't even ask him to move to Nashville yet. And then I get home because Jeff and I were roommates during the time. And I was like, well, we should probably ask him if he wants to move to Nashville because that's where we're going. So literally the next day, I was like, hey, you also want to go to Nashville with us? He's like, I don't know. Like, that's a big commitment, but let me get back to you. Next day after that, literally he walks into the door. He goes, dude, I'm so excited for Nashville. And I was like, oh. Yeah, I was like, I guess it wasn't that hard after all.
So
It wasn't.
Was the move to Nashville for real estate specifically? Like, is that a market you guys had picked out and decided, hey, this is where we're going to go build our business? Or was there other reasons that just happened to be Nashville?
Yeah, so we started talking about the South when the real estate idea was always Oregon is blowing up because this was in 2020, 21, where Oregon was in the blow up phase. Like, it hadn't started to go down a little bit. So the Oregon market was already super hot. Mm-hmm. So our thought was we need to go somewhere in the South that is growing but hasn't like grown yet. So Nashville was growing, but it was like the perfect market for us. And I was actually stationed at Fort Campbell, which is like an hour from Nashville, so I spent a lot of time here. So I knew the area, knew the market, and that experience, I was the only one in the South, so we figured let's just choose Nashville and go all in.
When you've seen a ton of growth in the past couple of years since you guys moved there, I'm sure it's been such a hot market.
It's been wild, man. Yeah, it's crazy. It's the one. I mean, all the agents here say it, so it's you pick what you want to hear. But it's the one market that has actually survived like the last 4 recessions. Like 2008, Nashville still stayed above the median, still stayed above the trend. All these recessions, It's still staying above.
That's cool. Yeah, I just think there's something about like so many people talk about like, oh well, yeah, maybe if I lived in the South or a Midwest market, if things were if, and you guys are like, well, let's just make it happen. Like, yeah, I think that's really commendable, and it's like, man, that's so cool that you guys would just pull the trigger, move out somewhere where you feel like it would work better for you for whatever reason and just make it happen, as opposed to coming up with excuses of why it wouldn't work. So that's freaking awesome.
Exactly. That's like something that we tried. I don't know. I say we did pretty good from the get-go is like just pulling the trigger and taking action. Mm-hmm. Because even when it came to like getting the 2 flips in Oregon, it was like we had them and we're like, okay, we need to figure out how to make it work. And like we walked into the second one. The first one we had because of Chris. Like, Chris made the relationship, which you could say the same thing about the second, but we still had to do a little bit of work. But like we walked into the second flip, that was our first actual, this is our thing, Wild West flip. And we're like, dude, we just bought this thing. We're like, this is our flip. We have to finish this. Like, it was kind of a little overwhelming thing. We kind of jumped in without any, like, all the stress came later, which I think is the way you got to do it.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that. And you guys have done what, like 7 deals in the past 2 years. It sounds like you guys are really just getting going. But man, I'm sure you've learned so much over those 7 deals. What, coming into this, like, did you guys understand about hard money and private money and how to run the numbers, or like how did all that come together to pull the trigger and make it actually come out profitable?
Jeff, I think I've never thought about it in this way until now. Like, the way you said all that was the amount of knowledge we had when we got into it was so small.
Yeah.
And in that regard, because it's such a small because our knowledge base was so small, I think that we had probably a million worries that were unknown. Maybe I should, let me say it differently. There's probably a million worries out there we could have had, but we didn't even know we should have them.
Right. I know exactly what you're saying. You're like, we weren't even stressed about it because we didn't know what to be stressed about.
Yeah, like it's,
Exactly.
hey guys, you're gonna, go to Nashville, start a business, and I'm thinking, I just gotta get to Nashville. What else? I don't know. Just get to Nashville.
Buy some old
It's like
houses,
what?
make them better. We're good.
Yeah. So there wasn't all these worries. It was, and Jeff had mentioned it was like when we were first going, like we were the business and that like it was our hands. We were going to do all the work. And so in that regard, we didn't need to know a whole lot. It was just all we had to do was buy a house, start working on it. And like for me, that wasn't scary.
Right.
But there's so many other things that come in that play into that. So, I mean, to answer your question, I got to Nashville. I don't even know if I knew what hard money was when I got to Nashville, to be honest. I don't know. I'd heard about it, but I'm like, I have no idea. What is that, a credit card? Because it's like physically like something hard. Like, I don't think I knew what it meant at all.
Yeah.
Yeah,
How did you acquire your first couple flips, and how are you acquiring them now? Like, how do you fund the deals?
Yeah.
So for the first couple in Oregon, Chris had made the relationship they were both mobile homes actually. So Chris had made the connection there where he was just going to go in there and flip these people's house. They were you could almost call them novations in the fact that we went in there, we didn't buy anything. All we did was take over their holding costs because there's like $1,000 a month space rent in those mobile homes. And they're nice parks, like they're kind of like retirement communities, 55 and up. So we just went in there and took over all their payments, funded the rehab ourselves, did the rehab, and then sold it, and then split all of the proceeds at the very end after paying back our rehab costs. So, I mean, it's a really great structure with the seller. Yeah.
Yeah, I want to actually dive into that a little bit because you called it innovation. I think that's a really interesting approach to do it. And I've heard of that, and I think it's a really cool way, especially for people who are starting, to not have to worry about, like I said, hard money or private money or buying this and have tons of closing costs. Like there's all these expenses you can eliminate, which removes a lot of risk, especially the holding costs. I mean, you had some, but you didn't have the mortgage and your debt on top of,
Exactly.
So anyway, maybe go into a little detail, explain what innovation is and how you literally structured it, like what kind of documents and agreements and how you pitch that to the sellers, like kind of go into that because I think that's super interesting.
Yeah, so this one, to be completely honest with you, I mean, when we did that, I didn't even know, I've never heard the word novation. Like this was literally just our brains coming together and being like, how can we buy this property and make this deal work without, because we ran the numbers like, hey, if we bring an investor, it's not going to work. If we do this, it's not going to work. And then we're like, what if we just renovate it for her and then split the profits? And then it just ended up turning into this thing that people are doing all the time. But the paperwork was fairly simple. It was kind of just a line item of every single thing that's going to happen with the deal. This is we're going to flip it. We're going to put this much into the rehab. After we sell it, you owe us all the rehab money first, and then we'll split all the proceeds. And we had some contingencies in there too, like if you don't sell the property, this is what you owe us on like an hourly pay basis. Just some things to protect us because we just wanted to. I mean, we were chopping this up when we had no idea what we were doing. We were sitting at our house just like, maybe we should do this, maybe we should do that, hitting up like agents, like, what do you guys think about this? Does this sound good? Like friends of ours.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, we sent, it was like combo of like Google, and then we sent it to Jeff Hartley. He was our real estate friend that brought us the first deal. But yeah, we're like, Jeff, how does this look? And it's like, well, you should do this and that. And we're like, okay.
So you guys are just writing up this contract just on your computer at home, just like, hey, what about this? What about this? Showed it to some people and added some things, tweaked some things. And I think that's so
absolutely
cool. Like, I think it's like, guys, that's doable. Like, sometimes we overcomplicate. Well, I don't have a real estate attorney. I can't move. It's like, dude, you can still take action. Like, just use your brain. Like I said, you figured out this whole novation thing without knowing it existed.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point.
Which is so powerful. Like, I think that's something that so many people are waiting for the guru to tell them, waiting for the perfect process, waiting for the system to be handed to them. And it's like, just think about it. Just sit down and think about it and put something together. And I bet you're smarter than you think you are.
Yeah,
and that it's going to work out. Like, sorry, Chris, go ahead.
no, I just agree with what Joe's saying. It's like just you're probably smarter than you realize, and you can probably problem solve better than you realize.
Mm-hmm.
And like the situation here, like with the seller, we literally go to get this thing notarized because we're at least going to do that. So we go to get it notarized and we give it to her. This is the first time she sees it when she's ready to get it notarized.
And she's what? She was like 70 years old.
Yeah, she was like 70 years old. She unfortunately she inherited the property from like her daughter who had died, I think it was. So she looked at this document, looked at it, sat down and signed it. She didn't read a single thing. She just wanted to see there are words on a piece of paper.
Like,
she signed it and we notarized it. So like that's not going to be a normal thing, but there's like a chance that you're overthinking it and all you have to do is just make it happen and just solve the problems like Chris was saying.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think it was Derek literally said to her, "Hey, we have time. You can read the agreement you're signing," and she's like, "It's okay. I trust you." And we were like, "Okay." We're like, "Sounds good."
That's funny. That's great. So you just go to. So this was someone just selling their home. You got a referral from an agent, and you went to them, put all this together, and said, "Hey, like we'll buy, but instead of us buying it from you and then fixing up and selling, did you like break it down and tell her your idea? Like, we're not gonna do a normal flip. We're just gonna leave it in your name. We'll take all your costs and then we'll flip it and we'll split the profit. So you're becoming a partner in this flipping with us." You just kind of pitched it like that to her?
Yeah, we pitched it to the agent and then the agent pitched it to the seller.
Of course.
Yeah.
To the agent.
Essentially, we realized we were broke and we couldn't pay for the house. So
Right.
we're just like, okay, what's the next best option? Well, let's just not buy the house and flip it still and split it 50-50.
And we could spend the money on the rehab because we had credit cards and we were doing it ourselves. So we just cranked those credit cards out.
Oh, I was going to say, how'd you pay for the rehab? So you used credit cards for the rehab, didn't buy the property, but had an agreement that you would be able to split the profit if it sells. And that's when the agent made his money too, was at the actual sale after the rehab.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So there's been,
and they made
none
more
of our
because
properties.
Because it was worth more. Sold it for more. Yeah, that's true. He probably made double what he would have made if he hadn't. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like every single one of our properties this far, like we have put no money into the deal. Like we've put I think one or two we've put earnest money down of like $3,000, but other than that, we've put zero money into any of these deals.
So let's go into some other structures then. So have you done them all this exact same way, or have you done other ways that you didn't have to use your own money?
We've changed it up. Derek's kind of like our money guy. He's been raising a ton of capital. We can get into that later too, but he can break down how we've been structuring them.
Hey Jeff, I would add this in. There was a few, just because it's if I was listening, I'd be like, what about this? We paid for everything with credit cards, but there were a few contractor trades we brought in, and they wanted cash. So we, like the countertop was a slab countertop. They wanted cash. So there was a few items in there where we had a tile guy come in and help us with a few things. We had the countertop, and those were all cash. It was probably, we probably put in like 4,000 cash.
Yeah,
I would say.
Right. So not a ton, but there was some money there. You just, take some from some savings and then make it work. So beyond the novation style, Derek, what's another way you guys have structured acquisition, be able to pay for this stuff?
Yeah, so we just do the traditional, use hard. After we moved here, we learned about hard money, learned about private money. So our first house here in Nashville.
Not Chris's credit card hard money. That was your first hard money. It's like, hey, it's a credit card. It's hard.
We have 7 hard monies.
Yeah.
We got lots of hard monies. No problem.
We got a lot of those.
Yeah.
So then you found out about traditional hard money lenders who would actually give you 80% of the cost or whatever, and then what do you guys do for the remaining 20% or 15% or whatever?
Yeah, so our hard money lender actually purchases the 100% of the purchase price,
Oh, nice.
and then we pay for the renovation. But when I say we, as in private money, so we, $250,000 purchase price of the house is paid by hard money lender, and then $100,000 rehab we use private money for. So that's also how we get into a deal with no money into it.
And how do you find $100,000 in private money? Because we throw around this term private money, like there's a private money tree. You just walk up and pull a tag, and it's like
dude,
private money just means it's a human's money. It's not a company. It's not a business. It's not. It's just some person. So how do you get some person to give you $100,000?
Yeah, exactly. So Chris and I were actually in Destin a couple weeks ago, speaking at an event. And this is what we talked about, was hard money and private money. And afterwards, I realized, I was like, man, I made that sound a lot easier than it actually is, because it is hard to raise private money, but it's also very easy at the same time. And they said, how do I do it? It's all brand new flippers. They've all done 0 to 2 flips. And where do I find my private money? And I was like, it's all at meetups and on Facebook. You find all the money you need on meetups and Facebook. I scroll through Facebook all the time. I've never raised any money on Facebook, but I've seen, hey, I have a deal. I need $100,000. And I see 20 comments saying, contact me. So you can find money on Facebook. But where we have found all of our money is at meetups. And we've never actually have asked for money either. People have just got to know us. We've made rapport with them. We basically just wanted to hang out and talk to people. And then that's when we realize, hey, when you're friendly with someone and they get to know you, they're going to want to invest with you as well, even if you don't know they have money or not.
I think you should tell them the Brendan story.
Yeah. So I was going to get into that. So we were at a meetup, I don't know, 8 months ago. Dude, this is awesome. This is how you raise money right here. And Chris and I were talking to this guy. He's one of our main lenders now, or private lenders. And dude, if he's listening, he's going to hate me. I did not think this guy had any money. He's this skinny, nerdy dude. I was like, I'm going to be nice to him. I'm going to be friends with him. He's a super nice guy. He was like, yeah, I got a couple Airbnbs. I have this, I still have a 9-to-5 job. But I talked to him for a couple hours or an hour. And he was like, hey, you guys seem pretty cool. I want to get into some flips. I love to, I can't give you a lot of money, but I can probably give you $100,000. And this is the most money I've ever heard. Yeah. Immediately, I just whipped out my phone. I was like, here's my phone number, or more like, let me have your phone number. And then literally a week later, we had a deal and he wired us $100,000.
That's crazy. Did you guys have where did you get private money contracts and make sure that he had security, title, if the default, did you structure any of that?
Yeah, dude, no, man. We wrote up a JV agreement, and that's all we have on that house. Now we'll do the promissory note deed of trust, because I've learned more about it. Because when I found out hey, we can use other people's money, I was like, I got to learn more about this. Mm-hmm. I don't want to use my money. Let's start using other people's money, and let's really make this legit and make this make it sexy for the investor, essentially, right? Yeah. Instead of a JV agreement, or else they're just not going to do it. So now we'll do the promissory note deed of trust, but that house and one other house, we just have a JV agreement written up with him.
That's awesome.
I was actually on the phone with him yesterday. And I was like, yeah, might not have been the best way to do it, but hey, we did it.
And he got paid, right? I mean, you gave him his money. You guys did the flip. It worked out?
Yeah, we're actually still working on those flips.
Okay, nice.
Yeah, so, but he's like, I've never once doubted you guys, which is really cool, because we've only known him for 6 months. And so when a guy says that about you, about kind of the three of us, it's really cool, because we haven't known him for very long.
Well, it's man, you really want to deliver for that person. You know what I mean? It's
exactly.
You want to honor that trust so bad.
Yeah.
Sorry. No, yeah, with that, after he wires that $100,000, probably like a month later, he was like, "Hey, I like how everything's going. I could probably do 3 or 4 more flips with you guys, like probably 300K." And I was like, "All right, this guy's got money he's not telling us about."
Yeah, that's awesome.
And then, so with that being said, we found all of our money at meetups, and
That's cool.
when I say we, I say me. Used to be that shy guy at a meetup who used to be in the back, didn't talk to anyone, and then I met this one specific guy, and that changed my perspective on meetups completely. Like, I'm the first person there, and usually we're one of the last people out of there too. And I'm just trying to. I'm not asking people for money. I'm just talking to every single person, and I tell them like, "Hey, what they can get," and then they usually push me to someone else, or the next week I go to another meetup and I find some money there.
So when you structure these now, you get a partner, you meet them at these meetups. Obviously they need to trust you, but you now have documents. So you said, I wanted to kind of break those down for the listeners. So if someone's like, I want to listen to this and go do what they're doing. When you raise that private money, you do a promissory note saying that they lent you the money and it's based on you repairing this and flipping back. So that's one document, is the promissory note. The other document is you do a deed. You put them actually on the deed of the home, correct? And maybe go into that a little bit.
Yep. Yeah. So I mean, there might be someone out there that tears me up because I'm still new at this.
All right.
But
if they do, then we'll learn how they do it. So have them reach out.
Hey, exactly.
If you don't like how we're doing it, give us a call.
Exactly. So with the promissory note, to make it worth anything, you have to have a deed of trust. And with the deed of trust, to make it worth anything, you need to have a promissory note. So, because you could promise someone money, but what are you promising them with? And it's
what's it backed by?
Exactly, it's on the house. But if you say, "Hey, you're on the deed," now what kind of money are they promised, essentially? And so that's why you need both those documents. And we essentially just have our title attorney write it up. We have them ourselves. I can now write them up myself, but I always push it to my title attorney.
Do you still do a JV agreement? Do you do a JV agreement as well as the title, or the deed and the promissory note, or just do you not do a JV agreement any longer?
Honestly, there's so many different ways you can structure a deal, right? So it just depends on if he wants just his percentage or if he wants equity. Like if he wants equity, you would want to do a JV agreement as well, because that makes him an actual partner. But if he just wants his interest and interest only, you only do your promissory note and your deed of trust, if that makes sense.
Yep. That's awesome.
Yep.
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of dive in that detail.
Absolutely.
I think so much of it, the documents. Like when I was learning how to do like subject to, that was my own, what documents do I need? What documents do I need? Especially when it comes to like lease options and like anything that's kind of creative. It's like, well, what documents do you need to protect you, but also, and I would say almost just as important, if not more important, to protect the other person. Because if the other person's not protected, they're not going to want to do the deal. Most likely. Most people aren't just going to give you $100,000 overnight. Most people are going to be like, well, where am I protected? If I sold you this house subject to, or like a novation, like how am I protected? And if you can show them, hey, this is how you're safe, this is how I'm safe, our motives and incentives are aligned, then it's like, let's work together. There's no reason not to. And so anyway, the paperwork is super, super important to make sure everybody's safe and secure so that you can confidently go do stuff together.
And one thing I'll say about the paperwork too is it's been a huge resource for us. We're involved in Ryan Pineda's coaching program. We've been in that for like a year, and with that, we have access to all of those documents. So being a part of something like that has a ton of perks, and that's like just a cherry on top, honestly. Like any kind of document we want, when it's novations, like sub to, deed of trust, any private money stuff like that, we have access to it all. They've got a whole like vault of it, so that's been really, really helpful with those kind of things as well.
Yeah, and there's so many resources out there. I just got to show you this because it's sitting on my desk. I just was garage sailing the other day with my kids. I love going to garage sales I have a 6 and a 5-year-old. And it's like, go get whatever the heck you want, right? They feel like they're kings. They don't know it's like not even cool to go garage selling. They're like, I can buy this and this and this. It's all $1. Anyway, so at this garage sale, I pick up this book, and if those listen, they can't see it, but it says how to handle your own contracts, and it literally has like leases and mortgages and installment loans and like this book of contracts, and it was free. She's literally like, anything in that book pile you can just take. And I'm like, dude, there is so many resources out there. Like literally there's a library. You can get free books at yard sales. You know, obviously there's the internet, which has, you know, so much information. And so like, and then like what you guys did when you very first started, you just made it up. Like that people think contracts have to be like approved by some, you know, like real estate god or something, like the judge of real estate. There's no such thing. Contracts, there's certain laws in different states, but at the end of the day, it's whatever's going to be held up by the judge. And you can have a perfectly worded contract, but if he feels like it's slanted in someone's favor and it's like manipulative, even if it's legal, they don't have to honor it. So it's like,
sure,
you can just put stuff together, and if you make it fair and you make it clear, you know, it's probably going to work out. You know what I mean? So anyway. But yeah, the more active you can get, the better you can get. There's programs, you can get all this stuff. But, you know, if it's going to hold you back because you don't know yet, just do what you guys did and just get rolling and then get it all dialed and get it perfected as you're going. And if it's not going to hold you back and you're a real analytic person, you can learn every detail in advance, cool, go for it. But I'm kind of like you guys. I'm like, I got to be taking action. This has got to have somewhere purposeful to stick, or I won't even remember it.
100%.
I would encourage people too. A lot of times, you know, you want to say show up to the table with all of the knowledge already in place, and I get that. But you know, a title company, they do this every day, and their job is to, you know, facilitate your deal. So there's nothing wrong with going to a title company and saying, hey, this is how I want to structure it. Does that work? You guys have done all this before, so tell me how to make this work. You know, I remember talking to one of the title guys a couple of months ago. I said, hey, here's a way we might start structuring deals. Do you guys have a contract for that? He said, no. I said, can you make us one? He said, sure. Let's just go over the parameters, then we'll create it. So it's good.
Dude, title companies are like, I agree, they're like the most valuable part of the whole puzzle. You know, you get agents, you get lenders, and all the money, everything's important, right? But man, title companies, I feel like, do such an important work to make sure you're safe. And again, like I said, they can figure out how to put it all together. They can do a lot more work than people use them for. I guess they're the most underrated, underutilized part of the puzzle that people don't always think about. I mean, when I started, I didn't even know what a title company was. You know, I knew what a real estate
I didn't either.
was. You know, I knew what a bank was and a mortgage, but most people don't even know what a title company even exists. And it's like, they're the most underrated part. They're amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, no, with,
if you don't
with
have
that
a good
being
one
said,
of those, then
no, with that being said though, like your title attorney, if you don't have a contract that we've been talking about, and what Chris just said, they have contracts. Like, just reach out to them and they'll do it. Like, I reached out to our title attorney when I was learning about deed of trust and promissory note. And I was like, hey, like, can you write these up for me? He's like, yeah, absolutely. The deed of trust is $800 and the promissory note is $500. And I was like, oh, hell no, dude, I'm going to figure out how to do this myself. And so I'm pretty sure I had him write up. So I, like Jeff said, we had the templates from Ryan Pineda. So I just plugged in, you know, things in those templates and sent it to him. And I was like, hey, does this look good? He's like, yeah, it looks good enough. And like, he'd send stuff back here and there, like to fix. But I think I had him do the promissory note because we couldn't find that. But I mean, that saved us $800. And
there you go.
But
love it.
With that being said, like, title attorneys, dude, if you have the money, just make them do it.
Yeah, that's great. So you guys have you get into it. You're doing these flips. You start using hard money. Are you guys only doing flips, or are you guys doing any long holds? It looks like maybe some wholesaling as well, or like what kind of other areas have you tapped into a little bit?
Yeah, we haven't stepped into the long-term game yet. right now we're figuring out if we need to. It's kind of like a tax reason right now. But by the end of the year, if we're going to get smacked with a big tax bill, we're like, okay, do we buy a big rental? Do we focus? We're throwing this big event at the end of the year, so we're like, is the event going to cover all of our tax bills? So we're looking at that, but not to get too sidetracked. We do wholesale a little bit as well. We've wholesaled 2. This last one is going to be a really big one. It's kind of a crazy story of how we locked it up, but it'll be our first like 6-figure wholesale. But Chris, I think you should talk about that, because Chris, this deal was a deal that people dream about, and this was kind of, I mean, I don't believe in luck whatsoever, so I don't want to say we got lucky with it, but the deal was kind of just handed to us on a silver platter. So Chris, you want to talk about it?
Yeah, we'd love to hear more details of and that's everybody's dream. Like, you can make 6 figures on a wholesale deal. Like, how's that possible? And I will say this before you dive into it. It's not possible if you're doing nothing else all year long, doing nothing. You think you're going to step in and just do one deal, and that'll be your one deal. But like, say when you're taking action, you're in the game, you're doing all these things, like opportunities come along. Let's hear how you guys made that happen, Chris.
Yeah, I mean, it's I think it's a short story, which I think kind of gives it more credit in one regard. But like if Derek's teaching, say for Derek, for example, when he's teaching about private money, he's always big on, hey, relationship is one of our core values with that. So get to know people, talk to people. It's good. And that same thing is what I was practicing. So here's what it was. I get home one day. I live in an apartment, so there's a parking lot there, and there's a truck that I usually park next to, and he's got one of those magnet stickers on the side that says, like, contractor, here's my business, here's my phone number. And I'm like, you know what? I see this guy all the time, going to his truck in and out, and I never say hi to him. I should, like, Chris, introduce yourself, say hi. And so finally I see him, and I'm like, hey, what's up? I see you're a contractor. I was like, I do a kind of real estate business, and we're kind of contractors as well. And so I'm like, tell me what you do. And so he goes, I work for, it's a contracting business, but he gets contracted out by insurance companies with houses that have water damage remediation, fire damage remediation. And so it's basically like the whole house has to be fixed in some regard. So I said, well, hey, you probably come across houses all the time that are very worn out, like extremely, need to be repaired. He's like, yeah, all the time. So I said, well, we buy houses cash, and honestly, the more worn out, the better, typically. And I said, do you guys have any houses right now that are worn out? Because we'd buy them. And he's like, yeah, I have a house right now, and it's a lady who she doesn't want to deal with fixing it. She just wants to sell it and move on. And I said, sounds great. And he's like, here's the phone number, here's the address, let's go walk it. I'll give you the homeowner's phone number. And then that was it. All we've done from there is facilitate a relationship with the actual homeowner, agree on a price, and that's it.
So you go meet with the homeowner, you get her to sign a contract with you for a purchase contract with the option to assign. So do you have, let's talk about documents. I'm like all in document mode today. I don't know. So you the seller, what documents do you have her sign?
Jeff, take this one.
So for this one in particular, she's actually in Texas. She's out of state.
Okay.
Just so really quick, the situation is weird. The lady who lived in the house passed away, and her brother inherited the property. Her brother is in prison in Texas. So the lady, my point of contact, who I'll call the seller, is the power of attorney for the brother.
Okay.
So I call the power of attorney, I call the seller, and I just kind of start talking to her. I'm like, hey, what do you want? What do you want for this? Like, what's the situation? And she doesn't really care because she's just signing, and the brother doesn't care because he's in prison. So it's like perfect situation. So I'm like, how about you take this amount? And she's like, eh. And then we negotiate like a little bit, and we're buying it at like 20% of ARV though. I'll say that. So we negotiate just a tiny bit. Yeah, 20% of ARV. And so we negotiate a little bit, agree on a price, and then I just send over DocuSign. It takes her a little bit to. I have to go back and forth with her a little bit. She needed to like show it to her attorney and make sure everything was set. But it's just a regular purchase and sale agreement with the option to assign. We got that one from our title attorney. He drew it up, and it's just everything was good from there until we got to the closing table, and like some deals do. We still have it. That deal is closing like tomorrow. So that deal was supposed to close 3 weeks ago. But for the people who don't know, these deals can, especially in a state that's going through this many hands, it's been like one thing out of the other where it's like this happens where, hey, we have to FedEx something to Texas. Now we have to FedEx it back and go back and forth, back and forth. So there's like a lot of issues, that are hidden, but it's one of those things where you just kind of have to get used to taking the hits and then resetting. Take a hit and reset. Take a hit and reset. It's like, this is such a big deal for us, and we're so excited to close it, but we just have to keep taking the hits and keep moving forward. And it'll close. Like, we're not worried about it, but it's just one of those examples where you hear the horror stories of people talking about closings on the closing table the day of, and then bam, something happens.
So let's dive into it, right? So you get to the one document. It's just a purchase contract with an option to assign, right? And then you find a buyer to assign it to.
Yep.
And then do you have them sign a purchase agreement, or what document do you have them sign?
We just had them. So I knew this buyer. He's a good buddy. So I just had him sign the assignment. I mean, it shows our assignment fee right on there. Mm-hmm. He texted me right after I sent it. He's like, "Dude, you're making a fat rip on this one." It's like, yeah, no, I am. Thanks. So like, it was just an assignment contract, and that has the purchase price, the assignment price, and then the total price. So that is what we had him sign. If I didn't know him specifically and we're sending it to somebody else, I would probably perform a double close. So that's where I would send him a purchase and sale agreement for the end price that he'd buy it for, and then my assignment fee, like our assignment fee, would be hidden from.
So then you guys go to closing table, but you're doing it all remotely. So you go to the title company or the notary, and she goes to the one in Texas. And what blows up, and why is it taking a few more weeks?
Mm-hmm. It's just, it went from, hey, we already have a power of attorney signed for the seller and the brother in prison. We don't need it anymore. I'm like, great, let's get it. And then it goes to, hey, we actually need that now. So we have to sign something, have him sign stuff in prison. And then it's, gotcha. Hey, we actually need an updated affidavit of heirship now. It's like just so many legal documents surrounding, the inheritance and the power of attorney that we thought we didn't need, and in my opinion, probably could have been solved from the get-go. So I guess it goes back to finding a really good title company and sticking with them.
Right.
I mean,
no, and that. Oh, go on, Derek.
I would say with that, Jeff. Speaking of documents and contracts, you want to talk about the memo too? That's if we're on the contract side, right?
That's a great point. Yeah, that's huge.
I don't know how it works in other markets, but I would assume it's the same. You can have a purchase and sale agreement on a property, and that's great. It's on paper. But what you need to do is you need to go to the county, the Register of Deeds, and file a memorandum for the purchase and sale agreement. Which basically what that does is it solidifies it. So if you're in your agreement still, and somebody goes to try and lock it up with the seller, they will get stopped at the closing table because there's a memorandum filed. If there's not, they can go sell the property, and then you have to sue them. But who's going to do that work to go sue somebody for this much? You're going to put in all this work, all this money, just for that one deal. So I would say the memorandum is something you need to do for every single deal. It's something we learned, and we're going to do that for every single deal moving forward.
And what's the title of that document? A memorandum agreement?
Yeah, so it's just a memorandum, but this one's a memorandum for the purchase and sale agreement.
Okay.
And your county register of deeds should have one.
Like, hey, they're in agreement to sell this, and if it falls through, that's okay. But if it doesn't, like, they can't just go sell it to someone else while they're under contract.
Exactly. Yeah, and it's just something that's filed at the county.
That's interesting. That's cool. Okay. Yeah. So there's so many different pieces. And obviously, you can do it without that, but But what happens, like you said, if there's an issue? So it's like the stickier the situation, the more you want to have these things to protect you, and make sure you're not wasting your time. And Yeah, that's super interesting. And it's funny because, you talk about, oh man, it's such a weird headache with the power of attorney and the prison, but that's why you got the deal, right? It's because of this
Exactly.
weird,
Yeah.
muddy headache that no one wants to deal with. That's wholesaling is solving
Hmm.
these weird issues, So
Yeah,
why did you guys decide to wholesale it instead of just flip it and just make
Hmm.
everything yourselves?
I love that question. You
That
guys
one,
go.
yeah.
That's such a good question. Go for it.
No, it is a great question. And our rule of thumb that we've adopted is with the market where it is. And so this is a condo, right? I should have started with that. This is a condo. It is
Okay.
in a flood zone. So we're like, do we take the risk or do we take the six-figure wholesale assignment? Because our rule of thumb right now is if it's going to make 3 times the amount, then we're going to wholesale it. Or
Three
we're going to
times the
flip it,
amount of
sorry.
what?
So if the profit is 3 times the amount of a wholesale agreement or the wholesale price, then we're going to flip it.
Okay.
So this one, I mean, we're going to make 6 figures. If we would have flipped it, we would have made probably, I'll just say we'll make about 100K on the assignment, but if we were to flip it, we'd make like 160. So it didn't make sense. If it was going to make like 300, we would have flipped it.
Sure.
But just risk mitigation. With it being a condo, with it being in a flood zone, we didn't want it to sit forever. The market's kind of gone down a little bit, so we figured just take the quick cash now.
Cool. So I want to talk about your rule because I love having rules because so much about decision making or so much about taking action is decision making. And so much of decision making is having these rules, even if they're not good rules, honestly. But if you just have some rule to go off of, you don't have to emotionally redecide how to think every time something comes across your desk. Like, does this pass my rules? Cool, I'm going to move forward. If it doesn't, I won't. And it frees up your brain enough to actually think and make decisions to take action. So I'd love that you have a rule. So your rule is, hey, if we're going to put in X amount to flip it, we need to be able to sell it. Our profit needs to be 3 times whatever we're investing in it, or what was the rule specifically?
So if we wholesale a property and we're going to make 10,000 on the wholesale on the assignment, then we will only flip it if it makes 30,000. So if it
Or
makes
more.
3 times, yeah, or more. So yeah, if the profit is 3 times the amount for the flip rather than assignment, that's what we'll do.
Gotcha. So when you're looking at a deal, hey, we could flip this or we could wholesale it. Will it make 3 times the wholesale? Then we'll flip. If not, we'll just take the money and go with it. So when it comes to
Yeah.
flipping, do you have a rule of like, what's your rule of how much, what you'll flip or what you won't flip? Like, how do you decide what's profitable enough to flip?
Sure. I think Chris, you want to answer that one?
Yeah, I was going to add something though to the last point is, I think it's such a massive thing is the cash conversion cycle. It's how long are you waiting? Like when you put $1 into a deal, how long are you waiting to get your dollars back?
Mm-hmm.
And if someone says, hey, like, I'll wait 6 months, I'll wait a year if I can get this much money. Say I can wait a year to get 200,000 as opposed to 100,000 right now. I get that. The exciting thing is that if you take the 100,000 now, that's 100,000 you can put back into your money making machine, your business, to then make more than just that other $100,000. So that's where things can get more powerful. Because I mean we could have waited, we could have waited 6 months or so to hit, I don't know, 160, 180, but I'd rather get the money into the business now and start using that for different marketing, different things to make more deals.
Yeah, I think that's such a key point. Like that time value of money is what I call it. What did you call it? I liked your phrase. It was fancy.
Yes, it's 3 C's. It's cash conversion cycle.
The cash conversion cycle. I love that. Yeah, it's like, well, what else
Triple
could you
C.
do with that money in that time? You know what I mean? Especially when you're looking at these long investments. I see people putting money into syndications and funds, and it's tied up for 5 or 10 years potentially. And it's like, man, when you look at the cash conversion cycle on that, it's like, what else could you have done with that money? And then also on point with you guys, and I'm not a house flipper. I'm learning about it. I'm more of a long hold guy myself, but I think it's very interesting. But the potential unknown variables and risks. If it's a wholesale deal, it's just done. But you're like, well, if we go flip it, the reason we need 3 times is all the unknowns. Like, what if we run into this issue and the carrying costs, and then there's a dead body underneath it and it gets impounded, or it's just like, who knows what you could run into. When if you just wholesale, there's 0 issues. Once it's done. You're not inheriting 6 months of headaches and problem solving. There's value in that too. It's not just the cap conversion cycle, but the bandwidth conversion cycle. What else could you do with your time and energy beyond just the money?
Yes.
So,
yeah, you'd be surprised for these flips. It's like you always hear it's like, what can go wrong will go wrong, but it's like every single time there's a flip, there will be something that goes wrong. There is no question about it. There was no question. There's not a question. It could be somebody drives through your fence, or somebody steals a work trailer.
I guys posted about that, how someone just freaking drove right through the fence, like after you built this brand new fence. Like, come on.
So there's all sorts of stuff that will go wrong. So
yeah. We had. I mean, I think it's good to go through it. We were probably like 3 weeks in, and then one of the neighbors called the city, and then like every different complaint you could make on a property was made. I mean, because we pulled it up and went through it all. I mean, like our grass was too tall. There was, workers were bringing, drywall and materials out into the dumpster. Some of it didn't get in, and then would blow out of our yard into their yard. So we had codes called on us for complaints. We had one contractor where he just was gone, and the GC is like, dude, I think he's either in prison or dead. Like, I don't know where he is. And then we had a brand new fence installed. Someone drove through it. We had almost $30,000 of tools that was parked on site. We were using them some to do a little bit of things. That was stolen.
This is all in one house as well.
Just to let you
it's
know.
all one house. Yeah. I mean, I even right before we had like our brand new kitchen cabinets and slab installed, the cabinet installer was like, "Hey, your whole kitchen floor is sinking, so we need to go down to the basement and redo the entire structurally, like your floor, load-bearing beam, fix everything." All these things where you're like, all right, like it just keeps going.
Yeah. No, I love that. One of my main rules in life, but it's also one of my real estate rules, is everything's going to take more time, money, and effort than expected. So, like, you're not allowed to get frustrated if it's following the rules, right? It's like, it's going to follow the rules. It's going to take more time, money, and effort than expected. And when that happens, you got to just roll with it, or you're going to be out of the game really fast, because that's like, it's inevitably going to happen. And if it doesn't, that'd be great, but it's going to.
Yeah. I think that's, I don't know, like, like poker's a great example, right? Like when it's, a round ends and you're going to play the next round, you have to ante up. You have to put a little bit of money in the table, and that always hurts. But you have to pay to play. And so, man, to me, it's like, doing real estate, it's like working out every day. Like you're building resiliency, it's, hey, Chris, we can't close the deal, the title, we need more signatures. Okay. Hey, Chris, the contractor's not here. I don't know where he is. Okay. Hey, the vanity you ordered just arrived and it got bashed in by someone and you need a new one. It's going to be another 2-week delay. It's like, okay. If you can take those licks and keep going, then you can build a huge business.
And you got to calculate these into your margins, right? So when people say, oh, I need to make X amount, it's like, you're not even really going to make X amount, but you've got to calculate it as if you were, because then if there's no wiggle room, then you're really hurting. And then you're not just frustrated, oh, we lost some money. It's like, no, we're screwed on this one. Like, this was total disaster. So you got to have those margins in there. And man, I can't believe we've only been talking for an hour. We'll need to wrap up here shortly. But I did want to ask you guys, like I said, what's kind of your rule on your margins? Like, how much do you need to be making on a deal? And obviously, the more expensive the deal, that ratio you got to play in there, I'm sure. because if you're making 50,000 but you're in it $1 million, that's a lot different than making 50,000 and you're in it 300,000, right? It's like, how do you decide how much you need to make and how you run those numbers to pull the trigger on which flips?
Yeah, so our bare minimum is 10%. So if the ARV is 400, if we're not making 40,000, then we're not doing the deal. So
10% of ARV.
that protects us.
Yep.
Yeah, and that protects us for like market deviation, right? Because you get into the million, and we'll like if it's above the median, especially in today's market, we'll adjust that. Like we'll start heavily thinking if it's like 10, if it's 12, we'll feel better. As the price goes up, we'll start to adjust that a little bit due to market deviation. Because if you're selling a house for $1 million, 5% is a lot different at $1 million than it is at like 400,000.
Sure.
So.
And then what about purchasing? So when you go buy an old beat up home, are you guys looking for like 70% of the ARV value to buy it at, or what do you buy at?
We don't look at that metric super hard. We really just plug it all into our calculator depending on the rehab that it needs. But we have been,
that is the right answer
average.
For the record. Like everybody's like, oh, just ARV or this or that. People do the same thing with cash flow. Like, well, like the 1% rule. I'm like, no, just plug it into your asset analyzer with all the actual information, with property tax and insurance and holding costs, like repair, all of the information. What's it actually come out at? Don't worry about if it's 70 or 60 or 1% or 2%, like, because that doesn't matter if that's not the reality of your situation. So I love that answer.
Yeah, I'll say if we bought our last flips at 70% of ARV, we would lose a lot of money. Like our average right now is at 58%. Like we've been buying our deals at about 58% of ARV, and that's good. That's been good. We've been hitting like 10 to 13% on the on the back end. Yeah,
you're around 58% ARV. Yeah, see.
Yeah.
It's a changing world, and every market's different and every situation's different, but that's cool to hear. Guys, this has been super exciting. Before I kind of want to go into like kind of these final 4 questions I like to ask, but before we do that, is there any kind of final thoughts or anything you guys want to share with the listeners? And then also, what's a good way for people to keep in touch and follow what you guys are doing, and even reach out if they want to work with you guys and help fund some projects and make some money off of your guys' hard work?
I know, Jeff, you were going to plug some stuff, but like Joe, you referenced it, was going back like to the calculator. Whatever you use is, there's been a lot of times where I plug the numbers in, and then the first thing I always do then is I go down to the profit. What are we going to walk away with? And there's been plenty of times where I look at my profit number and I smile. I'm like, this is good. And then I go up to say the purchase price percentage of ARV, and it's at like, I don't know, 80%. And I'm like, okay. Like, yeah, I'll still buy at 80% because the profit's there. So
that's cool.
To me, it's take the time, create a calculator that takes into account what your expenses are, and you do that once and you're done. You can edit it down the road, but there should never be a why'd you buy the house, and it's like, well,
felt good about it.
It's just like you follow the calculator. It tells you what your numbers are going to be. Anyway,
100%.
Yeah, I think the number one thing that has helped us a lot, and the thing that we want to make sure we're doing, is helping other people, right? So if any of the listeners here, they need help with, like we talked about, documents. If they need documents, we'll send them whatever they need. If they want a copy of our calculator, they can have it. They just got to reach out. So if you want any of that, or you want to just hit us up, it's at the Wild West Boys on Instagram, and just reach out. But the one thing that we are doing on December 9th, we're throwing a pretty massive event here in downtown Nashville. It's called the Wild West Growth Summit. There's going to be like 500 people there. We've got Coach Michael Burt speaking. He's a huge name, coaching space, talks with Grant Cardone, Ed Milet, all those guys. We've got this guy, Clint Cooper, out of Atlanta, who's doing like about $1 million a month in wholesale deals. He's crushing it. And we've got an innovation guy. He's going to be there, Trevor Nang. We've got actually one of the first Green Berets into Afghanistan after 9/11. He's showing up to talk all about business. he's got a couple businesses now, so he's talking about growth, all that. And Felipe Mejia, he's a local guy here who's got like 90 doors, crushing the rental game.
Yeah, I know Felipe. We've had him on here too.
Yeah.
Yeah, he'll be a speaker, so it's going to be pretty sweet. If you guys want to do that, I'll send you the link to it. Maybe you can put it in the show notes. And
Sure.
Yeah.
That'd be awesome. That sounds super valuable. I'm sure people, everybody should go check that out. So the handle is the Wild West Boys, or what is the actual handle?
Yeah, just the Wild West Boys. No caps, no spaces, nothing.
There you go. Easy peasy. I love it. All right, well, we're going to dive into our final 4 questions here. And you can answer them individually, or you can answer them as a group, depending on the question or how you feel, okay? So question number 1. What's your dream deal or a deal you'd hope to tackle someday?
Ooh.
A luxury new build.
Okay. As a to sell or just to have?
Yeah, like a new development. Yeah, no, to sell it.
Build
Like
a
just to
really
live.
nice house. I love it.
Yeah,
So a
luxury new build to
luxury
sell.
build. Cool. All right. What's been one of the most pivotal books you've ever read?
Ooh. Chris, you're a big book guy.
I'm gonna go with, there's 2 different ones.
That's
One
fine,
is
we'll
the
take
how
2.
to how to win friends and influence people by Dale Carnegie, and then the other one would be by Patrick Lencioni, the 5 dysfunctions of a team.
I just read that one last week. The
Okay.
5 dysfunctions. Yeah.
Yeah, just I don't know, as you grow in business, you find out that every deal, every dollar, every contract is attached to another human. And so having human skills is kind of number 1. So yeah, they always pay you back,
I love that. And the How to Win Friends and Influence People. Horrible title. It sounds so like manipulative and weird, like win friends and influence. Like they should have named it something else, because it's such a great foundational book. I mean, it's more of like how to interact with humans in a positive way. Is it better title for it?
It's way better.
Because it hits way more true to the heart of it. It's not this weird manipulative, like awkward book. Like that was one of my big influential ones too when I was first learning sales and just how to like live in the world, and it's a good one, so I like that you referenced that one. All right, question number 3. This is a new one, or 4, I guess. No, here we go. Question number 3. What is one of the most expensive / interesting mistakes you've ever made in real estate?
Oh man, I would probably say it's not vetting out your contractors. And it's I mean, we've paid so many contractors for work that they didn't, which is kind of on us, but doesn't sound the best. We've paid contractors just to get them out of the house.
Yeah. Dude,
essentially.
It's, I mean, the first house in Nashville, we probably had 3 different drywall crews in there. This other house that we currently have, we've had 3 electricians in there. And so we're still making those mistakes.
Yeah.
And so it's just vetting out those contractors and just really nailing down your payments as well, and not paying them all right away. We made mistakes with that, they're done, or they say they're done, and we pay them without looking at it, and we go to the house and it's not done. But then why would they come back and fix it? They already got paid. They're just going to charge you more.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I would say that's probably the biggest thing so far.
Yeah, I think that's huge. Like, I mean, obviously, and that's the biggest scare with all of, flipping is contractors. And at least you guys can GC it yourself. You know what you're doing, you know what I mean? But even the subs, and I've had the same thing happen. The moment you pay them, I had a guy, he came and did yard work. He landscaped my yard. And this is forever ago, before I was in real estate. It was just my private residence. And he was just going to come back and hook up the sprinkler box, attach it to the house. It was just laying on the ground. He's like, oh, come back tomorrow. We just got to go, whatever. He never came back. It was just the dumbest little thing. It took him 5 minutes, but I'm like, he just starts ghosting me and disappears. I'm just like, you just burned an entire future client base, and now I like do real estate investing, and I would never use this guy in a
Yeah.
million years because you didn't mount my freaking sprinkler in stock. But that's the thing. As soon as they have their money, it's like you're never gonna.
But exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, all right. So question number 4. There's a new one. What's the purpose of life?
Ooh.
We're just keeping it easy,
Yeah.
I know.
Well, we are huge. We're all three of us are believers, and so that's one of our main core values is Christ first, God first. And so I would say, not real estate related at all, is
Right.
What's the main purpose of life is creating more believers and just making more disciples and just honoring God in everything you do. So in my life, if it's business or God, it's God first. And so that's my meaning of life.
I'd say love God and love others.
Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I same thing, and the only thing I kind of add in there is it's actually fun to it's fun to be who you are. It's nice to go to bed at night and in peace, knowing like, hey, I did today how I wanted to do it, so
Love it.
yeah.
I love it, you guys. So thanks so much for being on the show. Thanks for carving out the time to get all 4 of us together. I'm excited for your event. It's coming out December 9th, you said, is when you're doing it?
December
Correct.
9th, yep, downtown
Cool.
Nashville.
Well, sweet. Well, hopefully everybody checks that out and you get some people out there from the show. But we love having you on. We'll look forward to having you on again someday down the road and see what you guys are doing. But without any further ado, this is Joe Jensen signing off for the Real Estate Investing School podcast, reminding you to create some good rules and follow them.